Just a little bit about my background, and then we'll move on with our panelists and hear a little bit about where they're coming from, who they are, and all of that. We're so fortunate to have these three individuals on our panel today because they have each of them really different experiences, and they have a lot of experience. They're like nice, deep stories about various aspects of this business, the business of food. So I'm looking forward to hearing, as I'm sure you are, what they have to share with us. So we'll talk a little bit up front, and as Jeremy said, we'll have some questions from you all at the end. So I'm technically a food historian. My PhD is in, you'll love this, modern European history. What does that have to do with any of this, right? Think of it as a huge context for how we got here. So I'm a big believer in context and innovation at the same time. So I'm relatively new to this area, so I'm learning a lot about you all and about these people on the panel as well. I came down here with my husband in 2011 and went to the university and do some teaching there. My course is called How to Think Like a Food Historian. And it starts with a breakfast taco, and we sort of like open it up as a book and like how would you look at it if you were a food historian. So I'm hoping to generate a little group of food historians in Austin. It's about just being curious. And so I started a project at UT called the Food Lab, which then morphed recently into a project called Food and City, which I spun out as a nonprofit outside of UT, but I also partner with UT at every opportunity. So we do talks, events, and we run something called the Food and City Challenge Prize, which is a startup competition that occurs every February. And we have some participants here with us. And it is it's a prize competition. It's not a funding mechanism, really. It's hopefully to get really early stage startups ready for funders. And we look at all aspects of the food system, not just food, which I think most of you are here in this room are mostly talking about food itself, but we look at things specifically these days about food distribution and food supply chain. We also write stories to ignite innovation, and we have an online magazine. We also just launched our print magazine, which I handed off my only issue to this gentleman in a blue shirt here. You can all, yeah, the man, see the man back there? He has the only copy in the room. You could, though. All right. Anyway, on to our panel. Why don't each of you describe what your background is? We'll just go right on down the line.
So we make a line of all-natural salad dressings, sauces, and marinades. We're sold locally in H-E-B, in Whole Foods, and Fresh Plus, and really just in this region of the country through Whole Foods. We're also in Safeway and Randall's and Tom Thumb. And
how many kinds of dressings?
We have like 30 some odd kinds of dressings and sauces, but not all of them are under our brand. Some of them we co-pack for other people. Some of them we make for Whole Foods with our brand on them.
What's your favorite?
Well, I mean, I have a soft spot in my heart for the one that started it all. My mom used to make this. Do you guys remember those packets of where you dump in the oil and vinegar up to a certain line? And she used to make that, and we loved it. And so when I went off to college, I tried that, and I was like, there's something wrong with this. And I asked her what she did, and she said she put garlic in it, fresh garlic in it, to make it better. And so the first one is sesame garlic sass, and that was the one that my sister and I started out with. It was something that we tasted at a restaurant in Santa Fe, and we tried to replicate on our own, and it won an award for us at the Fancy Food Show, the award that we've won at the Fancy Food Show, and so yeah.
Hey everyone, my name's Eric Silverstein. I'm 33. I own the Peach Tortilla. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, so I'll just go into a little bit about my background. I kind of came at this a little non-traditional way. So I graduated from WashU with a marketing and finance degree. double major, and then I went to law school and graduated law school in 2007, practiced law for 3 years, and was a litigator. Basically hated my job, hated my life. Money wasn't everything for me, so, making a lot of money at 24, 6-figure salary, but felt a little bit empty. So always wanted to try my hand at being an entrepreneur. And when I was 26, I just felt like, if I'd stayed down that law path, I was never going to leave, because I was just going to have too much weight carrying me around, like a family and a mortgage and whatnot. So at the time I was, living with my girlfriend, but no family, no house, nothing to tie me down. So literally put everything into my car and moved to Austin to start a food truck, which I was going to try to open in 2 months. At the time, it seemed like a good idea. Looking back on it, sometimes ignorance is bliss, and sometimes you got to be a little naive, or you just won't take the leap. And, I went into it with some knowledge. I had a business plan. Tried to raise money to build a restaurant initially. Realized that even though my friends were making significant incomes as doctors and lawyers, they had no faith in me whatsoever to run a successful business. And I felt like people were just meeting with me to appease me, but at the end of the day, they were never going to give me any money. So I decided to put my money where my mouth was, and funded my own company, got some investors. We started with 70 grand, leased a food truck from a gentleman up in Pflugerville who leased trucks to Loncheras. This is the only way I could get my hands on a rented food truck. And the best way I can describe it is I just grinded it out. There's no easy way to success in food. Basically sacrificed everything in my life to make this business happen. Family, friends, hobbies, sleep, and there are some familiar faces in this crowd. I parked my truck at Carla's Market, tried to call her until she let me into her market. It's really just about hustle, to be honest with you. I mean, there's no secret. There are secret elements there are elements to a secret sauce in terms of making your business successful in food, but at the end of the day, it starts with sacrifice. You have to be willing to give up everything to be successful. If you're not, there's just no point in getting into the business to begin with, because it's that hard. Since then, I realized about a year or two into the business that the food truck model was really broken. You see a lot of trailers, you see a lot of food trucks, but the question you have to ask is, are they making any money? The answer is no, they're not. 50% of the time, it's a hobby. The other 50% of the time, the guys are trying, but they're just treading water. And within a year or two, that truck will turn over, the trailer will turn over. It's a hard life. So, I had to make a decision as to how we were going to be profitable. Funding a brick and mortar at the cost of $600,000 or $700,000 just seemed unattainable at the time. It was just so much money. Banks weren't going to give me the money. Friends and family weren't going to give me the money. To be honest, it just seemed like just a crazy amount of money. I had no idea how I was going to make that money. And so we started getting into the catering business. We started realizing that our trucks were in demand for weddings, for corporate events. So I put $10,000 into marketing. We redid our website, redid our logo. I hired salespeople, and basically just went all in on trying a different model than just pulling up at a street corner and trying to sell tacos at $3.50 a pop. I mean, you got to sell a lot of tacos at $3.50 a pop to come up with $700,000 in profit. And I just wasn't willing to wait 20 years. So we ended up hiring a full-on sales team, started doing a lot of catering, and business started to grow. We did $200,000 the first year, then we did $400,000, then we did $800,000, then we did $1.5 million, then we did over $3 million, and funded the restaurant. And now we start construction this week on a 4,300 square foot event space. I'm trying to vertically integrate my catering company so that when our catering clients come to us, we say, hey, we got a venue for you too. And we'll do the food, we'll do the bar, we got a liquor permit. But I guess the one thing I would stress is that, you know, anything can be achieved, right? I mean, we did this, you know, I started this business with 70 grand. I mean, that may seem like a lot of money, but it really isn't in the food business. It's just your willingness, what are you willing to give up to run your business? You know, are you willing to give up time with your family? Are you willing to give up time with your friends? Are you willing to give up hobbies? And if the answer is yes to all those things, if you truly are willing to live and breathe your business, then yeah, it can happen. You know, you can be successful. You can make a lot of money doing this. But I know a lot of people that I started with that just were never willing to make those sacrifices, and they all quit. You know, they're all doing a different career. So I think there's hope on the horizon in the business, but you just got to be willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Just one quick question. I see here that you started something called Yumi Burger. Is
Yeah.
that the precursor to the umami burger? And what did you learn from that?
Well, that was one of the times when I failed. You know, I thought I would do 2 food trucks with 2 different concepts, and it was an okay concept, but again, I hadn't really figured out the food truck model, and so the problem with the Yume Burger model was I couldn't really cater because it was just burgers, and so we were just treading water, and I was trying to run 2 payrolls, 2 marketing concepts, 2 websites to update, and it just became overwhelming. And I have failed in this business. I mean, that's a perfect example where I lost money on a concept. Bad idea. I had a food trailer on Guadalupe. I thought it was a great spot. I thought I could sell to college kids. Bad idea. Turns out college kids don't want to spend more than $5 on their meal, so they're not going to pay for quality. So there is a learning curve. The plan has evolved. The plan continues to evolve. And Yume Burger is a really good example of a bad business move, you know? Just thought something was going to work, and it just, you know, didn't work. I think, you know, one thing that people tend to not see with our brand is all the problems that arise behind the scenes. You know, when you come and eat at a restaurant, you have a great meal. Hopefully you have great service. You have a great cocktail. You leave happy. But there's a lot of work that goes into just making that one meal happen. And it arises in 15 to 20 phone calls a day, all throughout the night, you know, last night was 9 o'clock phone call. Hey, the power on Burnett Road is all down. We got to shut down early. What are we going to do? How are we going to run credit cards? You know, because Austin Energy, a pole went out, you know? That's not common, you know, that's never happened before, but I would say those phone calls are typical. You know, and that's just me being an owner-operator. You know, that's just, you got to roll with the punches sometimes.
Yeah. And so you should have named it Umami Burger, right?
Well, then I think Adam Fleischman would have sued me.
Well, you're a lawyer, though.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think we could call it the miracle of running a food business, right? I mean, I'm always amazed at how sort of fragile a positive experience is when you eat out. Have you ever noticed that you could have, there's like 10 big variables and one of them is wrong and it spoils the whole thing? I mean, lighting. I mean, good food but terrible lighting. Wonderful food but a bad server. I mean, it's amazing to me. So, Linda.
Hi, can y'all hear me? Awesome, my green light is on. Hello, my name is Linda Barrios. I am the owner and principal of Little Spoon Consulting, which is my consulting business here in Austin, Texas. I work with folks like you, food manufacturers, whether they are teeny trying to get into farmers market, going from farmers market into local independent retail, or trying to make the bridge to major retail. Those are my folks, and I help them. I've spent over 11, I guess 12 years now. It's 2016, right? 12 years in the natural foods industry. I worked for Whole Foods Market for a huge chunk of my life. And through that, having that unique perspective of really growing up with a retailer that was very much growing up through the same period of time, I had the unique opportunity to do everything from operations, purchasing, marketing, communications, PR, and most recently occupied the very romantic title of being the local forager for the Southwest region, right? Everyone thinks I rolled around with a butterfly net and a cargo vest, but in reality, I was sourcing product, working with small food manufacturers from Austin, Dallas, into Oklahoma, and helping them get into Whole Foods Market stores and grow from there. My position was unique in that I worked with literally hundreds of different kinds of products, different manufacturers, folks in various stages of readiness and development, meeting with folks, everything from I have an idea to I kind of have a product to I'm ready to go national. It left me in a position where I got to see and touch, experience, and work on almost every single part of bringing a product to market, getting it into retail, and growing it from there. Some days it made my brain want to explode, but it was incredibly valuable experience. When I left Whole Foods in October, I loved the work that I was doing, so passionate about continuing to work with food manufacturers, especially here in Austin, and said, there's no reason why I have to stop doing that. So I started my own company, Little Spoon Consulting, and have moved on from there. I'm also executive director of an organization called ATX Makers, very much inspired by and similar to Better Bites. There's certainly a need for that kind of support, community, and resource sharing here in Austin. So ATX Makers thus far has been a meetup group, and when I left Whole Foods and had a little bit more bandwidth, seeing as it was a lot of companies that I had already worked with, I came on board as their executive director and have solidified them as an organization, and we're moving forward as a nonprofit trade association. There's certainly a huge need for that kind of support, community building, transparency, I think is a huge part of what you were talking about, Robin. We have all of these pockets of food manufacturers and some of them grouping together in different ways, but how do you really expand that network, expand that communication and ability to share knowledge and wisdom and resources among so many different pockets of the community. When I think of Austin and starting a food business in Austin here and now, I feel like it's the best of times and the worst of times in a lot of ways. The best of times because of the incredible energy and innovation and inspiration that exists in our community right now. Even in the 3 years that I've lived in Austin, just seeing the level and the quality and the innovation of packaged goods and food products that are coming to market now is really incredible. It's so inspiring. I mean, we are creating products now that we couldn't have even dreamed of 5 years ago. As amazing as that is, I would say in Austin specifically, and I'm sure this rings true for many other cities and communities across our country, you know, we're challenged by, I think, a lack of infrastructure to support the manufacturing of those products. The idea is there, the energy is there, often the ingredients and the quality and all of that is there, but the actual infrastructure in terms of manufacturing space, distribution, all of the boring logistical stuff, struggles, I think, to keep up with the pace and the innovation that we're seeing right now. I don't have a food product. I don't have a food business. I am the random unicorn that is not doing that. Because I believe my function in the community comes from getting to work with everybody who does and who has, and rather than having my head down in a hole and being like Lori and having to work tirelessly to keep her business afloat, I would much rather not have a food product and get to work and interface with as many folks as possible, hopefully sharing my knowledge and everything that I've learned through my days as well to get more products to market in the best and most efficient way possible.
Could you say just a little bit more about what Little
Yeah.
Spoon does? I mean, who would come to you and what would you do for that person,
Yeah.
company?
I kind of see Little Spoon as kind of touching 3 different sectors, right? And I cover that. Folks at farmers markets who are like, I have a product and I want to make it a real thing. I want to get it packaged and prepared in the right space and have it meet all of the legal requirements for being a real product. Working with that sector, working with folks who are maybe in farmers markets or maybe selling online and want to bridge that gap into local independent retail, and then folks who are in local independent retail who would like to bridge the gap to major retailers. And I can work with those folks on a variety of things. Probably most specifically would be navigating the retail landscape. What is it? What is the hierarchy? What is the structure? Who are these people? Who am I talking to? What is my market fit? Where do I belong? And how do I be successful in that space? And kind of working continually on that spectrum through each of those different portals.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
You're the second forager I've met.
Yeah.
I think Valerie Broussard, are you still here? She was here
Oh, was
earlier
she here?
this morning.
Yeah.
The other AKA.
I love Valerie. You know, her and I kind of worked almost in tandem on different sides of the community. I was retail focused, and she does the fantastic restaurant hospitality focus. But she's amazing. I love what she does.
So being foraging in the local community and being familiar with sources of ingredients, a question you're really qualified to answer would be, imagine that Austin becomes a serious center for food startups and innovation, and you all grow, and this room is packed threefold 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So the question, and this also bumps into the whole, I'm sure this will come up, what is local, how important is local, how do you define local? In terms of sourcing, but how dense and how deep is the ingredient supply chain for supplying a growing food business landscape? Does that make sense? In other words, is there enough ingredient capacity out there, considering the soil type and the water resources out there, to really produce enough local ingredients to feed a growing, even if we project out, a growing number of food businesses that want to source locally?
Not deep enough. Definitely not. There is really an incredible community of farmers and farm workers, whether they're urban or rural, here in Austin and its surrounding communities. But truly, in my experience, it is not deep or large enough to support not only the current need of manufacturers here in Austin, but any kind of forward projecting need in terms of ingredients that could potentially be grown and sourced here in Austin. I think that there is an opportunity, and certainly I have seen a lot of movement towards this, of utilizing modern technologies when it comes to farming, creating some different methods of farming and growing greenhouses, whether that's vertical integration or some of the methods that we've seen pop up across the country. Being in the center of the landscape, sometimes we don't get those things as quickly as maybe the coasts do, but I think there's a huge opportunity to increase and bring some modernity to the farming and agricultural landscape here in Austin, because there is not enough out there. And certainly there are some limitations, right? Some things just don't grow in Texas. They're just not we're gonna have to get over it. But there is a huge opportunity, I think, to increase a lot of those main crops that many manufacturers are utilizing, and doing so in a way that's going to be a lot more sustainable, a lot more cost effective. I think that there is also a big opportunity for creating more conversation and community between manufacturers and growers themselves. I think a lot of times I see manufacturers want to source local and having kind of individual conversations with farmers and trying to meet both a need and a price. But I think that there is perhaps a lot more power in aggregate and opportunities for conversations along those lines as well, which is why I think transparency, knowing who our community is and coming together to leverage some deeper change, and certainly to speak to needs like that, where perhaps purchasing and leverage and things can happen a lot more easily when there are more folks coming together asking for that than just individual manufacturers.
Great. So let's hear from you guys. How about some questions? Sure, you got a question or two. Yes. I think there's a mic following you around here in the form of Jeremy.
It seems like, the restaurant business has exploded, especially fine dining in Austin in the past 12 years or whatever, it seems like every week, you know, in Eater Austin or wherever, there's so many places opening up. And I'm looking at, I've been involved in a few other restaurants before, and I'm looking at doing another one. And it scares me. I was like, is there going to be a shakeout? How many more restaurants can there be? I mean, I know we're growing, but it seems like the rate that restaurants are coming up is just so much faster than the population is growing, and it just sort of makes me nervous.
Like, isn't the restaurant bubble, or or oversaturation?
Just too many restaurants and not enough people with the money to pay for those restaurants, to go to those restaurants.
Or maybe to source it and supply it, et cetera. So, Eric, what do you think?
I mean, I think that's accurate. You know, I think it is scary. It's not a rational market right now. The market's completely irrational, meaning that you have a lot of out-of-town money coming into Austin, concepts that need to build a restaurant location in Austin or want to, whether it's a high-end chef or a chain or whatever. They have the money, and if they're determined to find a real estate, they're gonna spend the money on the real estate, regardless of whether or not it necessarily makes business sense, right? So what you have is an inflated commercial market where you're paying $45 a square foot, $10 triple nets. We'll just figure it out once we open, right? That's not a good environment to be operating in. So what we're struggling with right now is, yeah, we want to open another location, but you know, like it's got to make business sense. It's got to make, the deal has to be right. You know, we have to make sure that rent is feasible so that our occupancy cost is 7%, 8% tops. You know, once we fall into that 10% range, it's too high. What kind of TI is this landlord going to give us? They're going to give us money to finish out, and if not, that's going to raise the amount of money we need to start up with, and then we're going to have to dilute our equity portion, or we're going to have to go raise it with debt. We're going to have to go to a bank. These are all questions that everybody is certainly considering in this market. I think the best approach may be a wait and see approach, where you know you are seeing high-end restaurants failing. La Vie closed its doors, Metal closed its doors, RO closed its doors. They're certainly not going to be the last restaurants closing their doors. I mean, just on Burnett Road where we operate, Fork and Taco closed. That was an $800,000 to $1 million project. I know for a fact that at least $500,000 was spent to buy the lease out. And that's not the only. I mean, there's been plenty of other restaurants that their leases have been purchased at an exorbitant rate, where the owner of the restaurant, it's a great deal for that guy. Hey, you know, I got to take $400,000 cash, pay off my debt. I walk on my lease, which I have a personal guarantee on, and I mean, so it's actually not a terrible market for those guys building the restaurants, because if they fail, it'll get swooped up. But at some point, we'll hit a breaking point. For us, we're just, you know, restaurants are. I mean, I'm not a conglomerate. I don't have, you know, $20 million in my bank. So we have to be really smart about what move we make. But right now, we're struggling to find real estate, and that's just, you know, we just got to find the right deal. So.
I would add that in the communities that I'm working with and different suppliers that I'm in touch with who are moving forward with opening brick and mortars or looking at having a more permanent storefront, we love City of Austin, but I've seen quite a few of them moving outside of the City of Austin for that reason as well, pushing into Elgin, Bastrop, dripping into Hayes County. And I could see potentially, certainly as population growth expands in those areas as well, seeing a lot more suppliers or restaurants, whether it's a true restaurant or a brick and mortar storefront for a current maker in the community, popping up just outside of city limits as well. It seems to be not necessarily an easier route, because it is not an easy thing, but definitely a different option rather than struggling to combat with the current market in the city of Austin.
Question?
Don't you think transportation also is a huge issue? Like, I would love to come once a week to eat at the Peach Tortilla, but since I live in the southwest side of town, it'd take me an hour to get to the Peach Tortilla and then an hour to get back home. I mean, I think that the transportation in Austin is just, it's really a...
That is so
I think
real.
It's a bad situation.
Yeah.
You can call Favor.
They don't deliver south of Ben White.
Yeah, I mean, we see it with, you know, we don't get a huge pop from 5 to 6 p.m. for our happy hour, mainly because I think Burnett Road's a parking lot. You know, so it's like, even if you wanted to come visit us, you might spend 20 minutes just on Burnett Road. So, I mean, and that's not even considering Mopac or 35 or Lamar or, you know, I mean, just for me to circle the block takes 10 minutes. So transportation is a problem. Yeah, I would say I would agree with that.
So, thinking of Favor and thinking of transportation, we see this big surge right now. I mean, this is like a major traffic jam up your driveway, right? I mean, between everybody who's trying to deliver food during that little last mile from everybody. And it's probably going to continue for a while until that shakes out. I mean, you've got, you know, Amazon, the post office, UPS, Uber, Postmates, Instacart, Blue Apron. I mean, you go out, I mean, there's literally everybody on the road, single delivery point to point for food. Wondering how that would impact all of your businesses in some way. And, you know, whether that will actually be a factor in changing our food experience, you know, whether we do go out or whether it is at home or whether we do go to grocery stores. I mean, it could sort of reshape that landscape. Any comments from any of you on that?
I mean, I'll speak to it. Personally, I'm not a fan of the food delivery movement, mainly because we put a lot of quality and care into our food, and it's just not going to taste as good when you eat it at home. But there's also the business standpoint of it, which is it's the margin game. You know, it's Favor taking 10%, it's Postmates taking 10%, it's Amazon Prime taking 40%. You know, Amazon Prime knocked on my door, and I said, I don't want to do a deal with you guys. You know, why would I want to give you? I'm doing all the work. I mean, when we give you 30% of sales, and they couldn't understand it. You know, they're just blown away that I didn't want to give away 30% of sales in a low margin business. I got to be honest. I hate that movement. I hate the food delivery movement. And I think restaurants need to stand their ground on it. And we're starting to do that, you know, because I think you know, these companies, it's all about volume, you know, so it's not about, hey, does this product hold well, or are we going to get it to the customer in time? Are they going to have a good experience eating your food? They're in the business of delivery. They're not in the business of food quality. So, you know, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because we have done some stuff with Uber Eats. We have done some stuff with Favor. But I almost feel like we're in a position where if we don't do it, then we get left out. And so there's this kind of weird balancing act. But we're starting to pull out of it. And I don't see all these companies surviving. I don't see Favor and Postmates both being able to survive based on some crazy valuation that some guy in a basement came up with. I don't see it. So, and I don't see it working with Uber Eats long term either.
Do you think you could charge that percentage more for delivery? In other words, and would you pay that not to be in traffic? And there might be, the market might be able to bear more. I don't know.
I mean, Favor's charging $5 for a delivery. I don't think we can add more to our food. Plus, I think I'll just speak for ourselves. I mean, we started as a food truck, so there's this perception that maybe our food is more compatible to that. But at the end of the day, we are a full-service dining experience. with a full bar and real servers that know what they're talking about, that go through 3 or 4 weeks of training. So I just don't feel like it's the same experience, which is why we're pulling back from that.
So eating is an experience.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd rather eat off a real plate than a paper box, you know? I mean, that's
Right.
why we went that route.
Does anyone want to add to this?
Yeah, I would say on the packaged food side, although full disclosure, no one delivers to my house, so I don't actually get to take advantage of these delivery services. But when I think specifically of packaged goods, especially our amazing community of local package suppliers, I think that there is so much lost in the experience of purchasing a product. I think of maybe an amazing local cupcake, being able to pick that up in a grocery store, turn it around, experience it, interact with it. Maybe you meet the supplier at a demo or at a farmer's market. I mean, that is a whole special layer that you get in terms of interacting with, knowing a product, and potentially knowing a supplier as well. And I think unless you are already familiar with that product, so much of that is lost by just having it show up on your doorstep underneath all of your whatever from Whole Foods or H-E-B, whatever you might be getting delivered. And I think especially looking at suppliers who are trying to capture new markets or new customers, it is certainly not an efficient vehicle for that. That being said, I've seen a lot of incredible stabs at delivery boxes that really celebrate and cherish local goods, and those are incredible, and it's a really beautiful thing to see. But I think along the same lines of the margin game, there's a price threshold, there's a price sensitivity there. And even if you have this incredible monthly delivery box that celebrates everything that is beautiful going on in Austin, if you really build in the margin that gets everybody paid what they need to get paid, that delivery box is so priced out of its availability that it no longer goes to anybody. So I think that there's definitely some barriers there. Although sometimes I do wish Favor delivered south of Bud Light, I will say that.
So it's complicated, right? I mean, we want to know about our food, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm always trying everything I could try to see how it works. So I had Instacart deliver some groceries from Central Market, and there were some berries in it. I believe they weren't Driscoll berries, but there were blackberries, and there was a little QR code on the outside of it that said, "You want to know more." And of course, the phone goes down, and next thing I know, I'm hearing the farmer talk to me that raised the berries, and his family, meeting his family, and looking at all the nutrition information, and seeing the farm. So attempts are being made to bridge this gap. Mm-hmm. Whether or not it's going to be enough or what we want, I think will be the question in the end. But it's an interesting experiment. Questions? More?
Thank you. I guess my question goes a little back to what was discussed, but let's say, for example, that everybody now, they go to the domain. Somehow everybody's going to the domain, and you see huge businesses, but you're trying to go and get that prime location, and they tell you how to be a conglomerate, or you have to be a well-known brand, and the same thing's happening downtown, and I've seen that with my realtor. So what chance do we small businesses have to first get a good location, and second, to have a fair fighting chance against these big companies in general?
Anyone?
Have an incredible realtor. I think of the power and the importance of relationships, of finding other people who are vested in what you're doing, who can help you navigate those roads and navigate those challenges and those obstacles. Yes, space in Austin is at an all-time premium, but I think there are still maybe little pockets or ways to get creative. I mean, we've seen Burnett Road just blow up in the last couple of years, where a few years ago there wasn't as much happening. I think people are really going to have to start getting creative about which pockets they decide to enter in Austin. And it may not be downtown. It may not be within 5 miles of downtown. But I think as population continues to grow and push outwards, and you start to see life come to pockets and neighborhoods in this city where it wasn't before. That is where the new spot is going to be. That's where the new Burnett Road is going to be. And I think being really tapped into what's happening on the ground and that level, and finding yourself an amazing realtor, there are still possibilities. You know, not all hope is lost here. It is challenging. You have to be creative, but I think that we're starting to see so much excitement in life come to different parts of the city. It's a matter of tapping into which one that's going to be next.
My landlord's actually Endeavor, so they lease out the domain. And to be honest, their main concern is just like any other landlord. They don't want a default on the lease, because then they're going to have to go find somebody else to lease the property, and they'll probably lose a little bit of money in the meantime. But my advice would be to leverage your brand. A lot of these new developments, for instance, let's just take Plaza Saltillo, which is opening up in East Austin and set to open, I think Q4 2017 is their delivery date. They're looking for local brands. They don't want, the bigger brands offer more financial stability. They come with the bigger bank accounts, but they don't come with the cachet. So I think these companies are willing to do a deal with the smaller guy, as long as your financials are in line. But you have to have a really strong brand. You have to have a really strong presence locally. Because these guys know, like Transwestern did the, the 406 or 506 or whatever on South Lamar, and there was like Boardwalk Burgers there, and there was some bagel company and Aromas there, and all the national chains failed. They all failed. World of Beer's closing their doors there. These guys know that the corporate guys who come in may not be successful, I will say there's really no way around getting a personal guarantee off your lease. You're going to get stuck with that no matter what. You could try to negotiate that down, or have it slowly kind of be chopped off every year that you're in business, but there's no real way around that. But I would say leverage your brand. Make your brand as cool as possible, as locally known as possible, and these developers are going to look for that, even at the domain, where you have local concepts. Really? Well, yeah. Yeah. So new ones? Well, like Mia Tapas is local, but I mean, I know Tycoon's open up there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You would flourish here, but you don't have, you're not already established.
Well, I mean, we signed a lease with Endeavor, and we didn't have a prior brick and mortar, but we did have positive cash flow. And they do undress your financials, so to speak, and ask to see how much money you have in the bank, and yeah.
Capital, I have great financials, but you are not a chef. You do not have a name established here. We don't want that. Where was that?
So you have a concept, or you don't have a concept, but it's not open
Great
yet.
concept.
Got it.
Between what I was told no, and now I hired a chef consultant and his wife who have name clout, but it's already too late with where I wanted to be. So now I'm trying to start sort of over again and say like, okay, now I have a name. Will you look at me now?
It's surprising to me. I don't have a good response to that one. That's surprising. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the current market. I mean, just to jump in for a second, it's the current market. Austin is at, like you said, an all-time high.
Yeah.
Downtown, the domain, you're talking like the stars of the city of Austin, basically. And so those developers aren't going to take a chance on a food business. I mean, I talk to those people all the time. You had positive cash flow and you had growth, and basically if you don't have that, restaurants are often cited as over a 90% failure rate. So basically, look at it from a money investor. You're going to put something in to a startup that has an over 90% failure rate. So that's what we hear on the city side.
I mean, one option would be to go like what I would call the ramen tatsuya route, which is take an existing restaurant space that is probably some of the worst real estate in Austin, put out some of the best food in Austin, and crush it.
Yeah.
That's option B, right? And that's an option that I would probably consider, is go to a strip mall location or some C, I would call that a C minus location in, you know, a strip mall off Research in pseudo Chinatown with a Target anchor. And
Go all the way.
and make it happen, you know? Tatsuya did that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I think it's not the worst idea. I mean, it's something we've considered, to be honest with you.
There's some, well, ACC made creative use of a mall, right? And there are more and more empty malls out there, and there's more and more entrepreneurs who are trying to aggregate food businesses to create sort of the food hall concept or the food market concept, and so maybe we'll see more of that. More questions?
I do have a question. My husband and I started a catering company about 3 years ago, and of course, I'm not, you know, I didn't grow up in the food industry, but I just have a passion for it. My question is, as far as trying to really get your foot in the door with the catering, because that has been pretty profitable for us, but not, you know, not in long term. We get some businesses, then it dies off. So how are you able to keep that going and to get your name more? I know you said the leverage, but how do you leverage? How do you do that? I mean, it's something to say, but I mean, how do you do it? So I guess my question.
I think the room is full of experts out there. I see a few.
What you spend it on?
Anybody have anything up here, though, that,
I mean, I would say that there's different elements to what I would call, you know, the secret sauce of being successful in catering. One element is your marketing. Have an amazing brand. Leverage it on social media. Hire a photographer. Spend the money on marketing. Businesses always cut money on marketing. They think they don't need it. You need it. You absolutely need it. You know, people are visual. People want to see your food, but they want to see it look good. They don't want to see some crappy photo you took on, you know, your phone. They want to see an awesome photo. They want to go to your website, and they want to see an awesome website. They want to see that your business is put together. How do I get in contact with you? Can I fill out a form? Can I get to you that way? When I Google catering in Austin, am I going to get to your company or am I not? That's a serious question. Am I going to get to your company? Is it on the first page of Google listings if I say, like, hey, I want an Austin wedding caterer or Austin caterer? You know, search page rankings, SEO. Those are all impactful. But at the end of the day, I'm also a big believer, in addition to marketing and SEO, I'm a big believer in having salespeople, getting your food in front of people. Hey, taste my product. We do food runs where we're just, you know, I get each of my salespeople to say, okay, let's pick 20 corporate clients that we want to get in front of. Let's go bring them food, and then every Tuesday meeting, did we follow up with this client? Did we follow up with this client? What has been brought through the door? I think it's a combination of all those things. And then to the extent you can get in front of people in, you know, more non-traditional manners, you know, there's plenty of opportunities to give away food in Austin. I mean, we get hit up all the time to do different events, and those are marketing dollars, you know, but they're out there, you know, if you want to do those events. So I would say a combination of all those.
more to add up here? More questions? There's one back there.
I'll get you next. Hello. For a question for each of the panelists. For Linda, what's how have you grown your brand? Like, how are people finding you? Is it mostly internet, that kind of thing? For Eric, when you were getting started, did you have a partner with you, or was it something that you just kind of were like all by yourself? And then for Lori, I just had to say I have only tried a few of your products. I get text messages of them all the time. I don't know how you came up with the name Sass. It is my last name. Kudos.
I love that. So me, myself, personally, Little Spoon Consulting. I was really lucky to transition from working for Whole Foods Market within the community that I wanted to be in to working for myself in the community that I wanted to be in. So truly over the last several months that this has been a real thing for me. I've really just been working word of mouth through folks that I've already known. I'm kind of lucky and valuable just to be in the network that I already want to be in. People have found me a variety of ways, though. I'm like, oh, Twitter messages are a thing. Oh, people find me on LinkedIn. Truly, I've been amazed at how... Right, I'm amazed at how many people have just found me through different little avenues and alleys. But I've been such a figure just within my community, working with small food manufacturers in Austin, that for me, even just starting small and slow with my own small business, it's great now to be on the other side and kind of growing this and creating this for myself. For as much as I've worked with other small businesses, that truly it's been more just word of mouth and being in the community. Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a partner. I had silent investors. I was kind of in it myself. I mean, I see good things having partners. I see bad perspectives of having a partner. The great thing about not having a partner for me is I call the shots, and I don't have to run it by anybody. So if I have something that my intuition is telling me, then I can run with it, and really I don't answer to anybody, which is great. What's the con? Well, I don't really have much of a support system, it's just me. So sometimes I feel like I'm kind of on an island. My wife cares a lot about me and the business, but she's not in it. She doesn't really understand all the problems that come with running this business. So I think sometimes the lack of a support system can kind of drain you mentally, because you don't have a partner to just lean on, really, and just be like, hey, how do we solve this problem, or how can we do it? I have management, and we're planning on turning our core management into partners, into sweat equity partners soon for our next project. But there's pros and cons. We just did it without one.
My sister and I wanted to call our products something other than dressing, because we felt like that they were useful for all different kinds of things. So we came up with a name that, like Coke, what does that mean? So we came up with the name Sass, because it sort of sounded sassy. And then only later did we decide it stood for Season All Stuffed Sauce. And so,
Love it.
Question back there.
First of all, I want to say thank y'all, because this has been the most useful panel I've been to,
Awesome.
mainly because it's been specific to the industry I'm about to dive into. But back to what you were saying, Eric, I completely agree with you. I don't like the movement. I'm completely anti the delivery. In fact, last night I even saw a friend of mine. She's a food blogger. She posted a picture of like Dock and Roll. They're kind of like Garbos.
Yeah.
And I don't go out of my way to get a lobster roll, although I want to try one, and I think that that option is something that would allow, I'd be more inclined to do it, even though it cheapens the quality of your product. I guess the question I have out of that is, have you or are you trying to track the conversion rate of the people that are getting to try that through Uber, Favor, and whatnot, and how do you track your customers that way?
It's a great question. The short answer is we don't. It's not because it's not a great idea. I'm just not sure how we would be able to do it, because we don't get really the information on the consumer side of things. Like we don't get like a list of names of who's buying our product. Favor calls in the order, Favor employee pays, they take the product. So I have no idea where that product's going. I have no idea who bought it. I know nothing. We've had management meetings where the question that's asked is the guy that's buying the product typically not likely to come to the restaurant because they just don't want to go out and eat. Maybe they just like to be at home. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're antisocial, whatever the case may be. But we don't know the answer to that question. And that bothers me, you know? I mean, we do the Uber Eats promos, which is different because they're getting the food out relatively fast. It's one item. We always make sure it's an item that can be delivered well. So I'm less concerned with that. But the favor stuff, I mean, we really have no insight into who's buying that product.
I can tell you why I order in occasionally.
Okay.
And I love to eat out, but sometimes I just don't want to go out, or I don't have time, and I still want something good to eat. So and I know I'm going to pay more, and it's relatively rare, but I don't really just, and this is just me, I have no data, but I don't really think it's going to hurt restaurants. I don't think that's going to hurt restaurants, because I think people want to go out and eat. It's an experience, and I enjoy it very much. It's relaxing.
I have a question. Full disclosure, I work with the program. I'm on the UT side of the program. So I see how all these resources exist for entrepreneurs. I mean, it's great that we're here with something that's specific to food, because on a personal side, I'm married to the industry. My partner's been working up the trenches for like the past 10 years as a line cook. So I haven't seen him in about 10 years, is my comment. But regarding the resources that exist for entrepreneurs, I wonder what kind of resources exist for those entrepreneurs morally and socially. How can we as a community be socially and morally supportive of our entrepreneurs and food people when we don't see them for ages? We don't know what kind of issues you have to go through with having rent. And I mean, rent, I think of one thing, rent for him is something completely different. So what kind of holes do you see existing in the Austin industry, and do you think that those holes are being addressed?
In terms of support for folks, I'm sorry, I'm trying to wrap my head around.
Right. So like for those people who are like paraprofessionals, so I'm only an observer of the industry just because my partner's in it. So I see what kind of trials and tribulations those people have to do. But I work at UT. I clock out at 5.
Yeah.
What can we do as a community besides just supporting and eating at the restaurants, telling our friends about it? What do you think we can do? What holes exist, and do you think that they're being addressed?
Well, I think that there needs to be an organization like Better Bites and like your what's it called again?
ATX Makers.
ATX Makers. You can support those organizations that are trying to support give that kind of moral support. Because what we found when Better Bites was active was that people did come and they sat around and they just wanted to, it was a therapy session almost. They just wanted to ask each other, how do you do this? Or who do you buy from? Or what have you seen with this distributor? Or what have you seen with that? And just offering the space for people to get together and the communication for people to know about it is, I think, a big hole right now.
I'll speak to that. The problem with the industry, there's the bigger problem with everything in the industry is what it comes down to be quite honest, is what are people willing to pay for food? If we as a city, as a society, as a culture, put a dollar value limitation on what we're going to pay for lunch or dinner, $8-9 for lunch, $15-20 for dinner, whatever the case may be, it pushes financial strain on restaurateur, restaurant owner, and it creates our financial model, right? Because we have to survive as a restaurant. We have to make money. We need to put people in seats. But it limits, it forces us to pay a certain wage for a line cook. And so now a lot of line cooks are salaried. So it's 5-10 hour shifts and they're salaried. And it, may average out to $8 or $9 an hour. Is that a good life? No. It's a tough life. It's hard, and I freaking hate that about this industry. It kills me. And we're trying to figure it out. There's a whole movement going towards eliminating tipping, and, there is a huge disparity in front of the house wages to back of the house wages. And so, you know, you got line cooks making 12, 13, 14 bucks an hour, but you got servers making 30. Does that make any sense? Absolutely not. It makes no sense whatsoever. So I think as opposed, I mean, the groups are great, the support groups are great, but I think if we could change the industry as a whole in terms of just what we're willing to pay for food as a community, it will soften the demands of the back of the house, to be honest with you. It'll allow them to earn more money and work a little bit less, because the back of the house does get crushed in the restaurant business.
Could you?
Let me just
Yeah.
say, I absolutely agree with that. And from the food producer aspect of things, there are things that we want to do as a company. We want to become certified non-GMO. That's and we got into it. We started down the road of doing it, and we're starting to realize that, oh my gosh, it's really going to increase the cost of our products. And again, what are people willing to pay for their food? We want it to be clean. We want it to be, we want to know where it came from. We want it to be local. We want all these things, and we want our community to be able to benefit from from what we do. But
Yeah, I echo that definitely. I can't speak to kind of the restaurant or maybe the chef specific part of it, but from a food manufacturing perspective, you know, when I see what that end retail price needs to be to make people feel comfortable enough to purchase it, and then when you start peeling back all of those layers, I mean, it could be a cupcake or it could be a carrot. The way that we view kind of the cost and the price and what we're willing to pay for our food has to shift, has to become more flexible as we have more transparency in terms of what it actually costs to get that thing from point A to point B, and what the livelihoods of the humans on the other end of that spectrum look like. And I think we are moving in that direction. Certainly, over the last 5-10 years, you know, the level of consciousness, the level of awareness, and kind of how people are vested in their food and what they're buying and what they really value is becoming more and more apparent, and that is encouraging. But I think until we're really ready to look at the hard line of what it actually costs to get that thing on the plate or in your basket, and pay the fair wage for that. You know, we talk so much about fair trade and fair wages for products coming from outside of our country, and I think it's really time we look at what the fair wage for things coming from our backyard are, because there are people that have to live off of what you're paying for that. There are livelihoods that are there and at stake, and it makes people uncomfortable to think about paying more for something. And I try to look at it at what is really the fair market value of this that keeps everything in line, and keeps people able to have a livelihood on any point of that spectrum and at any point of that cycle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're running into our deadline, lunch hour, right?
Yeah, we're over. But if you guys wanted to give some final thoughts,
Great.
that'd be great.
Do you want each of you give a comment, and at the end of it, we'll each of you share with our group here, what is your guilty food pleasure?
Oh my word. Just some final thoughts and comments. It's just incredible to see, you know, a community of whether you are an established food producer or you're interested in getting into the game, just coming here and utilizing the amazing resources we have in this city. They are there, people. They are there for you. The information is there. The humans are there to help you as well. You know, Jeremy and his program does such an incredible job of offering this kind of knowledge and resources to our community. So it's wonderful to see so many folks in these seats as well. And I'll be available afterwards if anyone would like to chat. My most guilty food pleasure? Oh my gosh. The Negroni at Laundrette. Definitely my most guilty food pleasure. Amazing cocktail, fantastic restaurant. Just it's a gorgeous color. I just like looking at it in the glass. It always comes with a huge ice cube. Yeah, that would be my guilty food pleasure.
I think Terry Bradshaw, Hall of Fame quarterback, said it best. You know, do what you love and love what you do. You know, if this is what you want to do, if you want to be in the food business, you have a great passion for it, this is where you want to be, and you're willing to give up to get, then there's hope. You know, like you can be successful in this business. I guess that would be my message. Like, you can start with nothing and be successful, but you got to be willing to take one step at a time and put in the hard work. Guilty pleasure, chocolate peanut butter Haagen-Dazs ice cream.
So yeah, I just think that for me, what's happened is that I've transformed from you just have to find a higher meaning for what you're doing. And that is what has happened for me, is that there's something beyond dollar signs and I came to realize, someone told me, oh, you really love your business, you really love, and I was shocked. I looked at them in shock. And then I came to realize, yeah, I really do. I love my business. I'm making food. There are a lot worse things to do than making food, making good food that people enjoy. And so, and transforming it into a learning experience has been a huge thing. So I think it's important to have something just beyond just what you're micro-focused on. And my guilty pleasure is, well, the latest thing that I had was this chocolate-covered, flourless thing that was at the Satellite Cafe. So.
Let's give our panel a hand. Great job.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everyone attending. Thank you to all the panelists. It was great. Thank you, Robin. On your way out, please take the muffins and drink the coffee. And thanks for coming out, and look for some more of our future programming. Thanks, everyone.